Hi there, I'm Andrea Johnson. I'm the Intentional Optimist. I thank you for downloading this video teaching on how to manage your stress and anxiety during the holidays. And I look forward to sharing my experiences and my management techniques and maybe encouraging you just a little bit. But what I want to start with is a caveat or a disclaimer. I am not, never have been, never will be a counselor, a therapist, a psychologist. I'm not licensed. I'm your friend. I'm Andrea, and I'm an anxiety sufferer. And I've gone through a lot, and I've learned a lot, and I've had enough people talk to me recently, both online and in person, that I thought that this might be really helpful to share. So I hope this is helpful to you. And I hope that it's something that if it's helpful to you, that you can then share with other women. Because for some reason, anxiety is not something we talk about well. I think it holds a little bit of a shame message with it for some reason, and I'd like to remove that. And I'd like to have us actually talk about it and figure out ways to make it better. So, what are we going to discuss today? I am going to look at what anxiety is and what isn't. There are certain things that we have like this idea of what it might be and what it might not be. So I'm going to talk about what anxiety is and what anxiety is not. I'm going to tell you my story. I'm going to tell you an abbreviated version. It would take a long time to tell my whole story, but I'm going to tell you an abbreviated version of my story. I just want you to know I'm looking at my computer here because I have some notes. I'm going to read to you some things. So just in case that looks awkward, it's because I just want to make sure that I tell you everything that I've got down here. I'm going to share some of my tools that I use to both manage it and mitigate it in the moment, like when something's happening, when I feel very anxious or when I'm actually having a panic attack. What do I do? These are some pretty common techniques. I'm going to share them with you. But then I'm going to tell you how I plan and I prepare in order to prevent it, to make it less difficult to deal with or to mitigate it, and then how I move on. So those are the things that I think are the most important. But let me start at the very beginning with basically what anxiety is and what it isn't. The medical definition of anxiety is this. Ready? A feeling of apprehension and fear characterized by physical symptoms such as palpitations, which is heart things, sweating, and feelings of stress. Now, in a few minutes, I'm going to tell you my personal anxiety symptoms. They are myriad, and I do have all of those. So most commonly, I see people sweating and hyperventilating and that kind of thing. So there are physical symptoms involved. So what is anxiety? That is the medical definition. Let me tell you some other things that it is. It's real, okay? It is all in your head because it deals with the fight or flight spot in our brain. That's where it comes from. Even though it's all in your head, it feels physical. And that doesn't make it any less real. Just because something is in your head doesn't mean it's not real. So really quickly, I had a counselor share this analogy with me of kind of where it is in our brain and what controls it. If we think of our brain as a fist, you can see it here. If you Google the brain and the amygdala, which is what we're going to talk about, if you Google that part of your brain, you'll see most likely a diagram, and if you do a slice right down the middle, you'll see that it's this center part of our brain. This is what we call the amygdala. This is our fight or flight spot, where whenever it's like your adrenaline gets up and it's immediate, you're either going to run away or you're going to fight. So it's that immediate response. The rest of our brain, this part of our brain, is the thinking part of our brain, and we'll discuss this in a little bit. But it's that area of our brain, when it's not protected by our thinking part of our brain, it goes a little crazy and gets a little upset. So that's where it all happens in our brain. So it is real, it happens in our head, but it manifests itself physically. Please understand that over 40 million adults in the United States suffer from some kind of anxiety, whether it's a diagnosed clinical disorder or just cumulative, simple anxiety, which is kind of, I think, what I deal with. But that's 18% of the adult population. Y'all, that's a lot. So please know you're also not alone. You're not alone at all. So 40 million people. It is also debilitating. It can like shut you down. It can be very difficult on relationships. It's hard on my relationships with my family. If I'm having high anxiety and things are going on with me, it's really difficult for me to deal with, to help my son and to have a good relationship with my son. But here's the other thing. The good news about what anxiety is it's treatable. There's tools, there's medications, there's therapy, there's all kinds of things we can do to actually treat it and to mitigate it. So those are the things that anxiety is. What is anxiety? What is not anxiety? It is not logical. I have conversations on a regular basis with my dad, who's super duper logical, super practical. Me, not so much. And I'll say something like, Dad, I am so anxious about this thing, or I have anxiety and I'm trying to figure out what it's about, but it seems like it's all good stuff going on. And he'll say, well, that doesn't make any sense. I'm like, well, that's the definition of anxiety. It's not logical. It is not in the logical part of our brain. It is not in the thinking part. It is in that fight or flight part that doesn't feel logical. The other thing it's not deadly. I mean, I guess it's possible that something could happen while you're in a panic attack, but it feels really scary. I'll get into this in a minute, but I felt like I was having a heart attack. I feel like I'm gonna pass out. It's not deadly. So recognizing that it's not deadly, that it's treatable, makes it something that's much more easy to manage. The other thing that it's not is it's not your fault. This is not a weakness. This is not a personality flaw. No matter what anybody tells you, this is not you being dramatic. It's not your fault. Now, does that mean we have no personal responsibility over it? No, we do have some personal responsibility, and I'll get into that in just a second. But it also doesn't need to rule your life. You can take care of it, you can manage it, but you're not alone. You can get help from other women, from family members, from your spouse or your partner or your significant other. You can get help. You're not alone. So that's the things it is and the things it isn't. Let me tell you a little bit about my story. So how far back do I need to go in my life to look at where anxiety started showing up? I'm really not sure. I can tell you that I'm a missionary kid, and I'm proud to say my parents were missionaries with the Southern Baptist Convention, and they went with the Foreign Mission Board, which is now the International Mission Board, and I grew up in Korea. But I can remember at 8 years old thinking, why do we have to go overseas? And I remember leaving our house and driving out of our driveway in Riverton, Wyoming, anybody from Wyoming out there, and thinking, I will never see this again. I will never be back here. Why is this happening? And remember thinking, this is gonna be rough. So at 8 years old, I know I started having issues with dealing with stress and having anxiety pop up. I don't know exactly how it showed up, but I can tell you that as I aged, by the time I was 10 or 11, I already had an eating disorder. So one of the ways that we can actually tell that we are suffering from anxiety, or that we have anxiety, is we have things that we use as coping mechanisms that aren't great coping mechanisms, like eating or drinking or smoking, or things that are unhealthy for us, spending. So it wasn't until I was in my early adult years that I realized I truly had an eating disorder. My family has a propensity towards obesity, and so it was real easy to say, I'm just chunky, but I seriously hid food. I stockpiled it. Overseas, we couldn't have peanut butter, so we would take it with us, and we would have cases in this big attic that we had. This is a long story. Big attic that we had, and I would literally take jars of peanut butter and hide them under my bed. And that was my coping mechanism. That was how I managed my stress and my anxiety. And, when you're in a small school and you're the only overweight kid, it just gets worse. So I had all that going on, but it wasn't until I got into my mid to late 30s and early 40s that anxiety really started showing up with specific types of symptoms that were more anxiety related rather than my coping mechanisms. Because when you're doing that kind of stuff, a lot of times all you're doing is treating symptoms. So I could lose weight, I could exercise. I've tried every diet out there, and I'll tell you in a minute, you can see I'm not overweight now, but those were my coping mechanisms. Mine were eating, and quite frankly today, even if I find myself needing a handful of my son's cereal, it's like, what's going on, Mama, that you needed to have some cereal? But eating and spending. I've been in and out of debt several times. So those are things that you can look at to see if like me, that's how you're handling your anxiety. But it became even more serious. I got married, and these are all good things. I got married, and my husband's a pastor. And I will tell you, especially even as a manager, when you start working with people, you start hearing their hurts, especially when you're in ministry. You hear their hurts, you experience their hurts, sometimes you get hurt. And that really it just builds up and becomes more, if you don't know how to deal with it and you don't have good coping skills or tools in your toolbox, as they say in psychotherapy, then it manifests itself in anxiety. And so for me, it became much more serious as I hit my 30s and 40s. I will share more of my actual story in some other videos, some other teaching videos, but it does include, my story includes things like my mother's breast cancer. I had gastric bypass surgery, which is why I'm no longer overweight. Infertility, adoption. We moved several times. As a matter of fact, I think I calculated the other day. I think I've personally moved from the day I was born 21 times. And even at my age, that's still a lot. So not feeling like I had roots, not feeling like I had a place to call my own. We've been in the Charlottesville area for 9 years now, almost 9 years. In January it'll be 9. And we're finally starting, my husband and I saying, this is where we have to put roots down. This is it. We have a son that we're raising here. But moving and changing jobs, and all of that bringing me up to when it really showed up big in my life was in the late summer and early fall of 2015. This was my mother. My mother was still with us at the time, and she was dealing with metastatic breast cancer at this point. My son was a kindergartner, and we were, like I said, adoption I shared was part of my story. We were learning at that time that he wasn't just all boy and that he wasn't just high energy, that there was probably something else going on. And our school principal scared us to death. He made me think that there was all kinds of crazy things wrong with my son. And it turns out it's ADHD. But it was 6 months of that for a good diagnosis. It takes a while to diagnose. And then we didn't have ADHD that we knew of. We might, in our family. So parenting skills needed to be learned, and there was all kinds of things going on there. Our sweet Beagle, who was 16 years old, we had to put her down, and I started a new job, and I was managing a bunch of people for the first time, and it just all built one thing on top of another, on top of another, on top of another. And one day at work, I had a lump in my throat that I just couldn't get rid of, and I also have mild asthma. And so I had my inhaler, and I thought, oh, this is my asthma acting up for some reason. And so I started using it, and then it wouldn't go away. And so I started using it more. Now, never mind the fact that there were plenty of times that I had symptoms that I now look back and say, wow, that was totally anxiety, up until this point. But this was my first real panic attack. As I started breathing more quickly, and the more worried I got about what is wrong with me, I started hyperventilating, and I didn't know that at the time. All I knew was I can't get a good breath, right? And my hands started going numb, and I was trying to work, and I couldn't write. And I walked into my boss's office, and I said, something's wrong. I don't know what's wrong, but I can't get a good breath, and I can't feel my fingers. And so she said, lay down on the floor, and long story made short, I left the office there on a stretcher and went straight to an ambulance in the emergency room. I was carted out in front of all of my colleagues, the people that I manage, my boss, everybody saw me leave. By the time I got to the emergency room, I think it was by the time I was in the ambulance, I was thinking, I wonder if I'm having a panic attack. And y'all, if you've ever had one, you know what it's like to have that fear and that physical reaction, but to also know what it's like to say, I just wasted an ambulance ride. What if somebody was having a heart attack and I took their ambulance? There's shame involved, there's embarrassment, there's this humiliation of being carted out in front of all of my colleagues and the people that I was supervising, like, oh, she can't handle herself, right? By the time I was in the ER and my husband showed up, I knew what was wrong. I was sure, and I even said it to the EMTs in the ambulance. I said, am I having a panic attack? And I pray that everybody has EMTs that were as sweet to me as these young gentlemen were. But they just looked at me and said, ma'am, we're not really sure what's going on, but we just want to make sure you're okay. And I look back and I'm thinking, they knew full well I was having a panic attack. So thank you, sweet EMTs. I don't remember your names. It was a while ago, but I pray that every EMT who I'm sure sees plenty of panic attacks is just as sweet as these guys were to me. But I ended up in the ER, and that was a real wake-up call. So what I realized, so part of my follow-up with my ER visit was that I needed to go see my doctor. So I go into my doctor's office, and I sit down with her. She's also amazing. I hope you have a really, really good doctor that you can talk to. And she said, you're here for a follow-up on an ER visit. And I said, yes, I am. I had a panic attack. And then I started explaining to her some of the symptoms I was having. And quite frankly, just doing this video, I want you to know, I have symptoms of anxiety while I'm doing this video. So some of the things I was experiencing were shortness of breath, heart palpitations, which I've had many, many, many years, I had a lump in my throat all the time. I said, I have a lump, I can't get rid of it. I feel like my throat is closing, always. And I can't go to sleep. I lay down at night and my heart feels like it's coming out of my chest, and all kinds of things. And she just looked at me and she said, Andrea, you can't live that way. And of course I said, do you have a pill? Can you give me a pill? And she said, I can give you something that might help to kind of start leveling you out a little bit, but you need to see a counselor. Now, please know I had already seen a counselor plenty. I have good relationships with counselors. This was not a problem. It was just, I had so much going on. It didn't even occur to me to see a counselor. So I said, yes, I would see a counselor, and so I found one. But in the meantime, waiting on seeing a counselor, I was starting to have, and that's what I'm having right now. I have my muscles in my chest get really tight. So I feel like I kind of have to stretch in my neck. I need to stretch my neck. And then sometimes it'll go into my back. But I actually ended up at midnight one night calling my doctor's office on call saying, for lack of a better term, I'm having chest pains. Stop laughing, because you know exactly what happens when you tell a doctor's office, especially at midnight, that a woman is having chest pains. On-call doctor called me really, really fast. And we did manage to communicate better and parse it out and pinpoint that it was, just my chest muscles that were really tight. There were no other symptoms that I was having that were a heart attack, but that's what it felt like. And the more you get scared and the more you worry about it, it like feeds on itself. So you have this baseline anxiety that produces this physical symptom that you then get worried about, and then it becomes worse and worse and worse. I hope this is resonating with you. This is real. This is my story. Like I said, I'm experiencing some of that right this very second. I wish I could say that once I started counseling and once I started, getting some good tools, that it went away and that was the end of it, but it wasn't. Let me tell you what my physical symptoms are, because I have some of them. Actually, I have a lot of them. My baseline symptoms, when I have baseline or like generalized anxiety, is I get a lump in my throat, or like I said, I get these chest muscles, chest pains. I get a shortness of breath. I have heart palpitations. Either my heart will race or I will get what's called preventricular contractions. Most people will think of that as like your heart skipping a beat. 3 different times in my life, I've actually worn a heart monitor for up to 72 hours while they recorded everything. And they're like, yep, that's just PVCs. And then I have a specialized kind of PVCs that's called Bigemini, I think it is. And that's when it does a funny beat and then a regular beat and then a funny beat and then a regular beat. I'm unique, I know, but that's okay. I'm a unicorn, right? But here's the thing. Oh, some other symptoms. I have what I call everything must go. That's when your bowels say, we need to not think about this for a while because we got other things to deal with. And irritable bowel syndrome is a really good indicator that you've got some stress in your life. These are all what I call canary in the coal mine kind of thing. It's like the thing that is like a flag that pops up and says, hey, you got something going on and you need to deal with this and you need to figure it out. So those are some of my symptoms. That's a little bit of my story. It happens constantly. I don't always have panic attacks. Usually it's just generalized anxiety. But several weeks ago, I was leading a group. It was just a Monday. And I really recognized it when I went to lead a group study on a book that we're working through. And I was short of breath. I just couldn't get a good breath. And I started feeling dizzy. And I said, hang on, y'all. I need to put my head down between my knees. And that's embarrassing, but you got to do it. You've got to take care of yourself and make sure that you're doing something that's going to mitigate these symptoms so they don't become something that becomes life-threatening. And what I don't like about this is it kind of makes me feel a little bit like a basket case. But let me tell you something. I'm not a basket case. I am strong, and I am smart, and I am courageous, and I'm just like you. Because you're smart, and you're strong, and you're courageous. And we can take care of this. And let me tell you what I do, some things that I do to actually manage in the moment, my tools in my toolbox that actually help me manage my either general anxiety or even a panic attack. Really quick, going back to our analogy of the amygdala, this is the part of our brain that tells us something's wrong, right? This is the really baseline core. If a car's coming at you out of left field, this part of your brain takes over and your adrenaline goes and you're out of the way. Or if your child runs out in the road or something like that. The problem is when we don't really need it to take over and it does, okay? So when I am in the middle of anxiety, for instance, I walk to and from my car for my job, and I listen to podcasts a lot, and I may not realize it, and all of a sudden I start feeling a little dizzy while I'm walking, okay? Now, imagine thinking, oh, I'm dizzy while I'm walking to my car. What if I fall down on the sidewalk in front of all these cars and these people walking by me? Well, then that becomes another one of those self-feeding things. So I have learned a tool that was shared with me by a counselor that takes into account the 5 senses, because when this amygdala takes over, it forgets that we have 5 senses. We have our hearing, we have our touch, our sight, our taste, and our smell, and it completely takes over. And so what we want to do instead of actually letting it take over, we want to use our thinking brain to calm everything back down. So this is called a 5 senses countdown. All right, and we take into account. So I'm gonna look at my computer here and make sure I tell everything right, because when you're telling somebody, I was trying to tell somebody this the other day and I couldn't remember all 5 of my senses, and I think I just did it a minute ago. I left out taste, but so this is our brain, and when we are in the middle of an anxiety attack or a panic attack, then all of these thinking pieces are gone, and our little amygdala is in there going, y'all are supposed to protect me, and I'm freaking out. Where did y'all go? So what we do is we count down 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with our 5 senses to actually calm this part down and to put us in touch with the world outside ourselves. Because another piece of anxiety is that it's like totally in here, totally inside. So we want to get in touch with what's outside of ourselves. All right. So when we're like this, and like the very first thing we start with is our hearing. And I forgot to tell you, I am going to have a PDF. There will be a PDF download, and I will include these instructions in that. I will include some of the other things that I talk about in this video. I will include them on the PDF. So the first thing that we are going to look at is our sense of hearing. And what we're going to do is we're going to do 5 things that we hear. So when I'm outside and I'm walking. This is a great example. Walking to my car. I've got a podcast in. The first thing I do if I realize I'm getting short of breath or getting a little dizzy is I just take out my earbuds and I put them in my purse and I start listening, because that is the very fastest way for you to get in touch with what's going on around you. So that first thing is hearing. And so I say things like, I can hear the birds, I can hear the cars, I can hear the mailman delivering mail, I can hear kids playing on the tennis court, I can hear the airplane in the sky, right? Or here I can hear the ice maker. So 5 things, I say I have those 5 things. That's my very beginning one. That's the first one. The next one is sight. What do I see? And I see 4 things. I see my fall decorations. I see the video camera. I see my striped shirt. I see the trees or the leaves outside. I see the blue sky. So that's 4 things. That gets me down this one. So we're starting to close down this amygdala and actually get our thinking brain involved, okay? The next thing is, what can I touch? I can touch my soft shirt. If I'm sitting at the desk, I can touch the smoothness of the desk. If I'm outside and it's conducive to this, like the weather's good and I'm in the right place, I pop off my shoes and I feel the grass. So I'm looking for 3 things that I can feel, and that's my 3rd sense. The 4th sense is smell. And so I'm looking for 2 things that I can smell. I know that sounds crazy when you're talking about the 4th thing and 2 things, but it's 5, 4, 3, 2 things that I can smell. I can smell the coffee in the coffee pot. I can smell that fresh cut grass. I can smell the exhaust fumes from the car. Let me tell you, when you're walking to your car and you're having a little bit of an anxiety attack, and one of the things you smell is exhaust, it's not super calming, but at least it's real. So 2 things I can smell. And the last one is taste. This is a little more difficult when you're not someplace where you can get a drink. Pardon me, my nose is itching. Where you can get a drink of something, but one of the first things you see people do for someone who's in the middle of an attack of any kind, like if even they're in shock, is they give them a glass of water. So what can I taste? Sometimes it's like, I can taste that exhaust fume, or I can take a sip of coffee or a sip of water. If you have a water bottle, take a couple of drinks of water. But all 5 of those things, so you're starting with your hearing. What can I hear? What can I see? What can I touch? What can I smell? And what can I taste? What can I hear? What can I see? What can I touch? What can I smell? And what can I taste? I feel like a kindergarten teacher, but y'all, when you're in the middle of a panic attack, you need somebody to be a kindergarten teacher for you. Trust me, I've been there. The other thing to remember in that is that if you can't do all of them, hearing is the most important. Sometimes when I pop those earbuds out and I say, what can I hear? And I start looking around for what can I see, and I start listening, sometimes all I need to hear is the birds. I have my personal alarm every morning set on birds. So, I mean, if I want to truly relax and I need to calm down, I just put on my sound machine and I put like a bird sanctuary in there. You have a sound that'll do that for you. It used to be ocean waves, and that actually is another good one for me. Ocean waves work for me. I have a friend that when we're out in the woods and you can hear the crickets and the frogs, she's like, oh, you know that ocean thing for you or the birds thing for you? This is the sound for me. So maybe even just finding whatever that sound is for you, because sometimes all we need is that one thing that just kind of stops us. It's like, instead of letting it become this thing that overwhelms us, it slows us down and puts us in a frame of mind that says, I'm present, I'm here, I can do this, I can think through this. So that's the five senses countdown. Number 1, best thing. I've used it with people literally who are having panic attacks with me, in front of me, and I've used it and it really helps. And you know, I've had people literally, when I say, what can you see? They go, and that, because they can't even speak, because it's just overwhelming, this panic attack. So know that you can do that, and that will help put you in touch with your 5 senses and slow you down. Another thing that's really good is general meditation, or or Bible verses, or so I'm a person of faith. I'm a Christian. Like I said, I'm a missionary kid. And let me tell you, I memorized a lot of Bible verses when I was younger, and there are times when, man, I need those. Even just saying, the Lord is my shepherd, or if you're Catholic, Hail Mary, full of grace. I mean, something like that, or journaling. Sometimes I will sit down and I will write. I'm really anxious right now and trying to figure out what it is. I have a friend who does yoga a lot, and that's how she manages. She's actually diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, and so that's what she does, and she manages it by doing yoga. Affirmations, like I said to you, I am strong. I am courageous. I'm okay. I mean, being able to say, I'm okay. This is not going to control me. There's apps out there. The Calm app is really, really good. I'll include that in the notes that I give you in a PDF. One of the things that I did right after that panic attack that got me carried out of my office was I carried a paper bag, a little lunch-sized paper bag, in my purse. And if ever I felt like I was starting to hyperventilate, let me tell you, I sat in my car and I breathed in a paper bag so that I wasn't going to pass out. Or I went in the bathroom and I breathed in a paper bag so that I didn't hyperventilate and pass out. So things like that, carry it with you if that's one of the symptoms that you have. A big one for me, and this is the further along I get in my journey, the more effective this one becomes, I name it. Just name it. It is amazing how much just saying something manages and helps your brain re-engage. It gets us out of this business right down there. If I'm walking and I feel my throat closing or a lump in my throat, I'll just call my husband. Say, hi, honey. I'm calling you because I got a big lump in my throat and I don't know what it's about and I just wanted to talk about it. And he'll say, well, you don't know what's causing it? I'm like, no, but then let's talk about it. So as we talk, sometimes I'll figure out what's the trigger, and we're going to talk about triggers in just a second. But talking to somebody makes a difference. Sometimes I'll just say to a coworker, yeah, I'm just really anxious today and I'm not sure why. And literally my throat will just settle. And I don't know what does it other than just naming it. It's not something that I'm hiding. It's not a secret. It's not shameful. I just name it and we're done. The other thing is, and I do not discount this at all, is medication. Sometimes we need it. I have friends who take anxiety meds on a regular basis during the day. I have a small medication that I take at night, and I'm not going to tell you names of medications. That's not my job. I'm just going to tell you that I have a little tiny pill that I take every so often that a doctor originated with me a long time ago, and I didn't even know it was for anxiety, and I didn't know that's what I was using it for. But there are times when mine shows up a lot at night. I lay down and my heart will just go, and I cannot go to sleep, and I can't catch a good breath. And so I don't use it on a regular basis. I use it when I need it so that I can get sleep. Because like I mentioned earlier, my son who has ADHD, one of our mantras with him is, we do better when we are well rested, when we are well fed, and when we are properly medicated. Or we could say when we are properly rested and properly fed and properly medicated. Everybody's need for medication is different. Yours is different from mine. Mine is different from my son's. But if you need it, talk to your doctor. It's okay, and it doesn't mean you're a weak person. For me, medication is a tool to get me to a place where I can figure out how to manage whatever I need to manage, and then I don't need the medication anymore. So for me, it's a tool to get me there. It is not like glasses that I put on or contact lenses that I put in to be able to see. It is a little different than that. It is more like training wheels on a bicycle. And that's what I use in order to get me there. So those are some of my tools. Those are some things that are really important. And I hope that they're helpful to you. I will include those in the PDF that I include with this video. So let's talk about ways to plan and prepare in order to prevent anxiety or a panic attack, to mitigate it when it happens, and to be able to plan for mitigation and to make it better, and to move on. Because ultimately, we want to move on, and we want to do well, and we want to thrive. So the first thing we're going to talk about is planning. When you plan, you figure out the things that you need, right? So one of the first things you need to plan for, you need to be able to plan in order to plan, is you need to know what your triggers are. Um, I promise you, 50% of your triggers, the things that actually make you anxious, are things that you never would imagine. 50%. That's my own unscientific definition of unnamed triggers. I promise you that is exactly what's going to happen. There are things you're going to say, this person, this type of communication is a trigger, this type of situation, or this type of, I don't know, maybe it's a family dynamic. Maybe for you, it's a type of food. Maybe it's the fact that you haven't slept. But some things you're going to say, I never even thought that that was a trigger. Unclear expectations, not getting enough sleep. Thinking that people, demand certain things of you, or being disrespected. Who knows? I mean, you need to figure out and look deep inside to find out what those things are. If you're listening to me at all, you're interested in personal growth. So this is a personal growth issue. You need to look inside and find out what it is for you. What are your triggers? If it is unrealistic expectations or disappointment or change or good things. Right now, tons of good things are happening in my life. Good things are happening in my family, for my son, for myself. Dreams are coming true, and I am still anxious. Now, I'm going to be honest, those chest muscle things, they're gone. Part of it is just telling you about them. So being able to look at those and see what they are. Look at what your coping mechanisms are, the unhealthy ones. For me, it was eating and spending. For you, it might be smoking or binging on Netflix, for crying out loud, doing things that numb us rather than help us to grow. And when you see, like I said, when I see myself grabbing, because we don't keep a lot of junk in this house, we try to feed our bodies with healthy things. My son has yummy cereal, and I don't eat a lot of sugar, but every once in a while, I just need, gosh, he's got this chocolate cereal that is really, really good, and I just need that, and that's a coping mechanism, and I take a handful of that, and I go, do I want to discover what it is that's making me need this cereal right now? Sometimes I do and sometimes I don't. But a lot of times it's when we do what it is we do, something caused us to do it. It was the precursor to needing that cereal that I need to look at. What is it? Am I stressed? Am I anxious about something? So look at what your coping mechanisms are. If you are like me and you wanted to go on a spending spree, what is it about your situation that caused you to need to go spend money? That's how you can work your way back into figuring out what your triggers are. Another thing to do to plan is to figure out what your values are. I am a values-based coach. I think that when we can figure out what our core values are, then we can actually make decisions based on those. And these are not your morals. These are not your beliefs. Your beliefs can change. Your morals can change. Your values are you at your most clarified, deepest sense. There's usually like 3 to 5 principles that just are really, really important to you. And when those things are either not met or hurt or undermined, that's when we have problems. For me, they are things like personal freedom and personal responsibility and family. Other people, it's like integrity, honesty. I know people that, man, you lie to them and you are dead to them, right? I mean, it's like those kinds of things. This is your core values. There's an exercise that I do with my coaching clients. If you get in a course with me, you'll get this exercise as well. But you can do this yourself. When you start writing them out, maybe look at things that are, what did you get really upset about and why were you upset? Well, they disrespected me. Well, maybe it's because respect is something that's really important to you. Maybe it's a core value. When you know what those are, it's like putting bumpers up in a bowling alley, like for kids, where when you actually, as the bowling ball, head down that lane, you're going to stay in that lane. It's like setting up a good fence system so that you're not veering off. You're actually heading towards where you want to be, towards your goals, towards the things that you want to be doing. And having those values and knowing what they are helps you stay in that lane. So if you know what your values are, then you can actually plan for what you want to do. So how do you prepare? When you know what those things are that trigger you, when you know those things that are important to you, you can then decide when that thing happens, when the trigger happens, how am I going to respond? Sometimes it's just deciding I'm going to walk away. It may be I am going to recite a Bible verse to myself, or I am going to recite a mantra to myself. If we know that that something is like, for instance, a minute ago I said, I might quote, "The Lord is my shepherd." It's like, oh, that's right. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. That tells me I'm okay. He's going to take care of me. If that's not your belief system, there's other things you can do. You can put together your own affirmations and mantras, but meditations or just plans on how you're going to respond. Knowing what you want to do when you get yourself in those situations or when something like that happens. When we're talking about the holidays, y'all, we're talking about things that are pretty plannable. There's always going to be something coming out of the blue, but this is a time of year when you kind of know what your plans are. My sister and I talked yesterday, what are the plans for Christmas? And so we actually know what they are. And she said, now that I know what yours are, I don't have to worry. So that's a really good example of being able to plan. Another thing is, based on your values, you can look ahead and put boundaries in place. Boundaries are good for everybody. Boundaries are not, hey, I'm cutting you out of my life. Boundaries are, oh, this is where I end and you begin. This is where you end and I begin. It's not about putting up fences. It's about figuring out whose baggage I need to pick up. I don't need you to pick up my baggage, and I don't need to pick up yours. And being able to know what our boundaries are, what's important to us, and say, this is where I'm going to stay. It's like that stay in your lane thing. Keep your eyes on your own paper, do your own thing. There's a really good book out there called Boundaries by Cloud and Townsend, and I'll put information for that in the PDF for you. But know what your boundaries are. This is not a good fences make good neighbors thing, or maybe it is, and I'm just interpreting that improperly. Boundaries are things that help us to know where we stand with everybody else. So in that same vein, be intentional. Maybe you need to make new or alternative plans. For my family, we've decided, because my husband's a pastor, we don't get to get away on the weekends very often, and my son's in school during the week, and I've been working during the week. When do we take time off? So we've decided as a family the last several years that we take vacation at Thanksgiving. That is our personal family time. We go away and we do our own thing at Thanksgiving. We spend time with our families, both families if we can, at Christmas, but we do our own thing at Thanksgiving. That's our alternative plan. Maybe you need to do some things to take care of yourself. Maybe you need to say, I'm only going to do this many things this holiday season. Or maybe I am going to, I don't know, if you're not going to travel, maybe you're going to stay home. That's okay. You need to figure out what you need to do to take care of you. Maybe you need a bubble bath every day. Maybe you need to carve out some time to do something that really helps you stay calm and focused. Maybe if you're a mom, you need to spend time with your kids and experience some really happy, fun stuff during the holidays. Maybe you need to get out inside and experience nature and go for some hikes. That's what we do at Thanksgiving. But the other thing is to give yourself permission to step back. It's okay to not be fully involved all the time, so that when you are involved, you can be present. It is important for our relationships to be there when we are there. Bob Goff says to be where your feet are. So if you can't be where your feet are, maybe you need to step back. It's okay to do that, and it makes it better on everybody. I have my best friend and we've gotten to where we say to each other, it's okay for you to cancel on me. It's okay for you to tell me. If you're not honest with me, it's not good for either one of us. And we're not worried about hurting each other's feelings. We've learned, and we're continuing to learn, to be able to say, this is the honest truth. This is what I need to do. Maybe I need to step back. And that makes it better for everybody, because if you're not there, or you're going to get in a fight because you're there, it's not great to be there. That's not ideal, right? And the other thing is to communicate it. If you're not going to be there with your family, if you are going to make alternative plans, if you need to bring your own food, if you need for them to not mention this political situation, if you need for them to not mention a past transgression, you need to communicate. Figure out ways to lovingly tell somebody, I want to spend time with you. I want to be in this situation, but I need these things to be different. I need to make sure that we're all safe in what we're doing. So once we do those kinds of things, this enables us to move on. This enables us to thrive and to live. So the other thing I want to tell you is be you. It's okay to be you. If I turn this camera around, as a matter of fact, I'm going to do it. If I turn this camera around, you can see over there on the wall, and I don't know, you really can't see it really close, but I have a picture in my house here of a pig flying. So maybe I will take a picture and post that with this as well. But I am very whimsical. I like silly things, and I need to take a break, and I need to like make things lighter and to celebrate and to be silly all in some of the times. Be you. If you're serious, if you're thoughtful, if you're sentimental. My son is super sentimental. I'm not so sentimental, but he is. So I need to let him be him. But it's okay to be you. You need to be you. Take care of yourself. Do the things that you need to do. If it's daily reading your Bible, I listen to my Bible. If it's daily reading a good meditation, if it's spending time with certain people or not spending time with certain people, do it. Do the things that take care of you. Celebrate the good things. Sometimes the things that are good, like I shared a minute ago, also cause anxiety because it's change. Change is very difficult. So even though they're things that are scary, they're good. And when I celebrate them, it kind of removes some of that anxiety. So celebrate the really good things and be willing to let all those feelings just kind of flow through and then be okay with it. But understand that others, no matter what happens, may not get it. Like I shared earlier, my dad says, that doesn't make any sense. Well, it doesn't have to make sense to you. It's just, it is what it is. They may not get it. And if it means that you need to step away for a little while or, do something that may not involve them, just let them know that you love them. And if they don't get it, that's okay, but you need to take care of you. And that's all part of making sure that we can move on and that we can thrive and that we can do well. So it's okay. So just remember, even though anxiety is hard and it's a lot of times brought on by stress and the holidays are stressful for everybody in some way, shape, fashion, or form, you're not broken at all. You are not. I am not broken. You're not alone. I'm here and I have the same issues. You may have them different symptoms than me. You may have generalized anxiety. You might have clinical anxiety, but you're not alone. Talk to somebody. Let them know. You can manage this with a counselor's help, with a friend's help, learning some of these things on your own. You can manage this. It doesn't have to manage you. You can plan and prevent, and you can move on. My mantra, my saying, my tagline is, let's laugh at the days to come. You can laugh at the days to come. Just because you have a family situation that might actually cause you a little anxiety doesn't mean you can't laugh at the days to come. It doesn't mean that you can't enjoy Christmas with your family or Thanksgiving with your children or whatever. It doesn't mean you can't do that. You can do this. You can laugh at the days to come and move forward and thrive. You got this. I promise you got this. If this was helpful to you at all, I hope it was. Please share. If you know a woman who needs to hear this message, share it with them. A mother, your sister, your cousin, your friend, your colleague. Feel free to do so. Ask for help. Don't go alone. Don't do this by yourself. Panic attacks by yourself in the bathroom are the worst. Don't do it, girl. Seriously, don't. PM me if you need somebody to talk to. I'm not a counselor and I don't know that I can answer everybody, but you need to ask for help. It's okay. And if that means finding a counselor, Mr. Google, very helpful in this area. You can find somebody that will either take your insurance or will give you a payment plan, or you can find a friend who will listen to you. Chances are you have a friend that's literally dealing with the same things and you don't even know it. And the two of you could talk about this and figure it out together. But most of all, we are in this together, and we can and we will laugh at the days to come. Thank you so much for your time. I know this was long. I hope it was helpful. Please let me know if there are other ways in which I can help you. If you've got other ways that you manage your stress and anxiety, let me know. We'll incorporate them next time we do something like this. But until next time, I thank you for your time. Let's laugh at the days to come. And for this year, have a blessed holiday season, no matter how you choose to celebrate it. Thank you so much. I'm Andrea Johnson, signing off. Have a really, really, really good day. Bye-bye.